I got in touch with him kind of quite accidentally. There was a mutual party who felt that I was the only person, despite me and him having very varying views, very strongly varying views. He's on the left, obviously, I'm on the right. That I was the only person that would look at his case fairly, because I have been a vocal critic of the Me Too movement. And to be completely honest, before he and I got on the phone, I believed he was guilty because, well, he was found guilty. And also because the media had even done a number on me in terms of there were just so many allegations, it was difficult to sift through or to not reasonably assume that something had to be true. And so I took a look at the case and was positively shocked at what I discovered. I believe Harvey Weinstein was wrongly convicted, and the reason that he is sitting in prison is because of the media. It was a trial by media and not a trial based on the facts. Now, I want to be very clear here. This does not mean that I think Harvey Weinstein is an upstanding citizen or a moral person. He was completely immoral. That's why he found himself in this circumstance. He was cheating on his wife and by my regard, therefore, cheating on his children. But that's not, you don't put somebody away for rape because you think that they're immoral or that they abuse their power. Hollywood has operated the same way for a very long time. It is a world in which people will prostitute themselves, women will prostitute themselves for parts, for a chance at becoming famous. And
voluntarily.
Rightfully, New York just overturned the decision and is sending it back down to the lower courts because they had the appellate judges acknowledge the fact that it was essentially a kangaroo court. They were convicting him on character and not based on any of the facts.
I mean, over 90 other women came forward to say or to make allegations of sexually criminal behavior against him. Does that not give you pause for thought, the sheer volume of people all with similar stories?
That is exactly why I believed it, because there were so many women. And then I hadn't even, and I'm sure you didn't realize, who actually put him away. How many of those women put him away? And the answer is 3. So it went from 90 accusations, which the media kept hammering into our minds, and it came down to the testimony of 3 women who had consensual sex with him after their alleged rapes, according to their very own testimonies. The 2 women in New York in particular had consensual relations with him thereafter. And when you see the emails sent to him, the text messages sent to him, asking for parts, asking for, tickets here, tickets there. One woman in particular brought her mom to meet him. It just, your brain kind of comes undone, and you recognize, wow, what happened here was wrong. And like I said, it doesn't condone his behavior. It doesn't condone recognizing your power in Hollywood and recognizing that women will sleep with you simply because they think that you're a conduit to their success. But wrong is wrong, and Harvey and I don't have to agree on politics or agree on moral character or agree on theology in order for me to say that he was wrongfully, in my belief, wrongfully convicted and should be freed.
Now, everybody knows how much I enjoy my tea, and I'm very happy to say that today's show is sponsored by Peak's Pure Fermented Teas. Visit you on these big issues and have had a very public feud. We're bringing them together for what we intend, I hope, to be a proper. So, welcome to both of you. First of all, it's great you're doing this. You've had a public feud for a couple of years now. You've torn into each other in various forums. This is your chance to take each other on. And at the center of this, as I said in the intro there, is a very serious global story, which is the Israel-Hamas war and all the complexities that come away from that. I want to give you both the chance to make an opening statement. So, Rabbi Shmuley, you won the toss. We didn't really actually toss, but you both agreed you could do this. You go first. Your opening remarks.
Thank you, Piers, for having me, and Candis, thank you for debating me. I have spent my life bringing together the Black and Jewish communities, emphasizing that we share not only a history of shared persecution, but of spiritual promise. Today we debate an American tragedy, a woman of unique eloquence who has abused that eloquence to become simultaneously the foremost anti-Black rhetorician in all of the United States and the foremost anti-Semite in America. The statements that Candis has made against her own community, that they cry wolf and constantly say that they're victims of racism. Her attacks on George Floyd, a man who was suffocated to death for a $20 counterfeit note saying that he was a horrible human being. A woman who went up in front of CPAC and said, I was never a slave in America, as if that's the only form of discrimination. is what has led her community to call her not Candis, but Clandis. The first ever female black woman who appears in her rhetoric against blacks, calling LeBron James dumb and stupid and an icon to the black community, as Clandis. Simultaneously, you have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candis Owens, but Candis Owens, because her Goebbels-style rhetoric against Jews, that Jews are nearly all pedophiles. The State of Israel will set up a Theodor Herzl, a pedophile, as a haven for pedophiles. That Judaism is a demonic, satanic cult that only protects pedophiles. And by the way, her absolute obsession with Jewish sexuality and Jewish genitalia, the first lady of France, Brigitte Macron's genitalia, is disturbing. It's one of the reasons I think she hates Sigmund Freud so much, because she's a Freudian field dream in terms of his arguments that the greater the sexual suppression and repression, the greater we see violence. But when you say that the Jews killed JFK because he was about to ostracize Israel, when you invent all of these fabrications out of whole cloth, what is the result? The result is the demonization of Jews that leads to violence. Piers, just 1 week ago, 2 days after Candis falsely accused me, as she has for 2 years, of being a murderer, of threatening to kill her, something for which she will face legal action, because you cannot malign a rabbi and his daughter as murderers. 2 days later, I was swatted in my house, where 5 police cars had to break into my house because Mayor Michael Wilds of Englewood, New Jersey, received an email, arguably from one of Candis's followers, after she said essentially what Henry II says: "Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?" which leads directly to the murder of Thomas Becket, who today is a Catholic saint, of course. We were swatted, and the FBI is now investigating Candis's rhetoric. They're investigating.
Rabbi Shmuley, I'm interrupting because you've now been speaking for 3 minutes.
One final point.
So Candis will get exactly the same amount of time. It's up to you, but it's an opening statement, right? And what I would say.
May I just say finally, if I may?
Well, if it's quick,
The biggest issue I have with Candis, to be honest, is that she claims to be a Christian. Candis, didn't Jesus say you're supposed to love your enemies? Is the love you show me that you call me filth twice on the last show that you did with Piers a piece of filth? You're supposed to love your enemies. Is that turning the other cheek? And Piers, you're an English gentleman. I've known you for many years. You allowed her to say that without even a piece of filth. When Jesus said that you're supposed to turn the other cheek, where have you ever turned the other cheek? When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, the arrogance, the nonstop attack against Jews, the demonization. If you are a Christian, then I am the second coming of Christ.
Okay. That's 4 minutes you've spoken to. Out of fairness, Candis, if you want to use 4 minutes to respond, you can. All I would note, Rabbi Shmuley, is you've spent 4 minutes personally attacking Candis Owens. I set this up as a debate about what is happening with the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. You've turned it all completely, immediately, into an ad hominem.
I like how Piers Morgan does his mediation.
Onslaught against Candis.
How could you possibly say that? You are speaking to a woman who says the Jews are a ring of demonic pedophiles, and you're saying that I have no right to defend my people? You know, Piers, you have to stop this once and for all. There was nothing ad hominem at all.
All right.
When Candis says that the black community is a bunch of crybabies, everything I said was policy. I could not disagree more.
Candis will now get the same amount of time, if you wanted, Candis, to respond.
Thank you, Piers. And I don't think I really do need to respond to the ad hominem attacks. I think actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said, and trying to screen that as a defense of black people. The black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America, they won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, you know, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing, and what we've always recognized, is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky. And their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief, and you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here. That across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it is coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering, what is going on in Israel? What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Today's show is brought to you by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and Optimum Night. Michael Owen lost £40. Robbie, the face that lost 50 stories, and in the Jew. Candis, why is it, do you think, that so many people in the Jewish community believe that you are anti-Semitic?
I think that's actually a very good question. And just to go back, I'm going to answer your question. I just want to make sure people are recognizing, because he said a lot of stuff there, he's not able to counter. He essentially tried to hold me to looking up the sources. We've now found the sources, and it's the BBC, it's the New York Times, and it is the Euromed Human Rights Monitor.
We have found no sources, and we'll fact check it out.
70,000 tons of bombs were dropped on Gaza, and per the BBC, the British aircraft dropped 4,000 tons of bombs on Dresden. So just for clarity,
in a single night, not 11 months.
In a single night, correct. Please don't cut me off. I have not cut you off. He called that a blood libel because that is a strategy, which is meant to just distract people from the truth or looking into it. So you say everything you say is a blood libel. Now, to answer your question, Piers, I think that's a very good question. And the answer for that is because the media as an entity has been basically mining Jewish pain, the history of their pain, by taking people out of context and presenting things that are as a fact that is simply untrue, things that I've never said. We are watching right now, and that's why I'm grateful for you to provide this opportunity. You are watching Rabbi Shmuley do this live, right? When we talk about yellow journalism and people that take things out of context and try to present it to people with a bunch of hysteria and go, oh my gosh, Candis said this. Oh my gosh, Candis is a Holocaust denier. Oh my gosh, he's called me all of these names, and he doesn't have a single fact in there. They just know that if they say those things, it's a trigger. It is reminiscent of exactly what was done for Black Americans for a very long time They have now since changed their perspective on me, but for a long time they thought that I legitimately hated being black and hated the color of my skin because I stood against Black Lives Matter as an organization, and I stood against what Black Lives Matter was doing. And the media made them hysterical. She's a black person who doesn't even want to be black, and she's a black white supremacist. They bought that narrative because when the media lies, a lot of people accept that what they're reading is true. But of course, I didn't hate Black Americans. I didn't hate anything other than BLM abusing and mining black pain, going back and saying, well, it's going to be just like slavery, to distract people from what was ultimately just a fraudulent organization that was actually going to bring more harms to black.
And honestly, bro, it was nothing but fraud at the highest level, $1 million fraud.
Black Americans in the end. And that's how I feel about the state of Israel and everything they're doing. Ultimately, I believe it's going to yield more anti-Semitism. It's going to make people associate what Bibi Netanyahu is doing to all Jews around the world. And so I think it's important for them to realize it's these same exact tactics of manipulation, the same exact name calling and ad hominem attacks that is not based in fact and not based in reality, but based in not wanting to answer the fair critiques that people have about what Israel is doing. But that's a very good question.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, I mean, there's some validity to that argument, I think, is that too often I do see people immediately branded anti-Semitic if they dare to criticize the Israeli government. But there's a very big difference between criticizing a government and its actions and a whole people, which is what anti-Semitism is. And do you accept that difference?
The beauty of Israel is it's a democracy. You just said that hundreds of thousands of people are marching against Benjamin Netanyahu. I welcome those protests. It shows that even during war, listen, in 1864, the United States had a presidential election. Some people wanted to cancel it, saying that how could you elect Lincoln when there's a civil war? And they still had the election. Israel's the same. Let's just go through Candis Owens' history of anti-Semitism.
I will let you do that. I will let you do that, and she can respond.
Piers Morgan, like, hold on. Before you get on that bullshit, address what we talking about. I feel like that's what
on my
you're gonna
specific
say.
point, though, do you accept that it's perfectly possible, and indeed it should be in a robust democratic society, a central tenet of this, that Israel's government and its prime minister should be criticized by anyone who chooses to criticize them, without the people who criticize them being branded anti-Semitic?
Of course. I am a very close friend of Netanyahu, and I criticize him allowing Qatar. Qatar is one of the most duplicitous, evil governments in the world. They house all of the leaders, the billionaire leaders of Hamas. I criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, my dear friend, for allowing money to go into Hamas in the belief that they can be bought off. I criticize the Israeli government for not recognizing the Armenian genocide, something that Candis Owens blames the Jews. She actually says that Kemal Ataturk was led by the Jews to the Armenian genocide. By the way, the Armenian genocide took place under the Ottoman Turks, not Kemal Ataturk. She has no sense of history, and she just fabricates constantly.
Okay,
Let's just look for one moment.
Okay, on the specific
wait,
point.
One second. Let's just go through her history of anti-Semitism. Please.
Yes, you said you had specifics of Candis Owens being anti-Semitic.
I will. Yes,
anti-Semitic. What are those examples?
Okay. You see, the Jewish community did not want Candis Owens to be anti-Semitic. This is actually a tragedy that a woman gifted by God with such eloquence has decided to become a purveyor of hate. And when she said in 2018 that she has no issue with Hitler because if he was a nationalist, but then he wanted to go beyond her borders, even then we didn't call her an anti-Semite. That's an absurd thing to say, that you had no issue with Hitler. Hitler, even domestically by then, had enacted all the Nuremberg laws. There was already the November 9th, 1938 pogrom.
Hang on. Just to clarify, let's take these one at a time. What do you believe she said about Adolf Hitler in the clip you're talking about?
She said that there was no issue with Hitler except for the fact that he went beyond his borders. If he was a nationalist,
let's play the clip.
Enough.
Let me play the clip.
It's domestic. But my point is, no one called it.
Whoa, let's come on. We gotta stand on the business now. Let's see what the clip actually said.
In the interest of fairness, I'm going to play the clip so that viewers who've never heard it can hear what actually got said.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. he was a National Socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. So in thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid.
So, Candis, on that specific point, would you say that Rabbi Shmuley has categorized it correctly or not?
He's just openly lying, and that's why he didn't want you to play the clip. I was in the UK, by the way. I was at the Royal Automobile Club. There were Jewish journalists in the room, and nothing was written about it until months later when somebody was working on a hit piece about me. I was answering a question when they were saying, how can we just embrace the word nationalism when it sort of has this dirty feel? And I was just essentially saying that I actually don't have an issue with nationalism. I think it's totally fine to be a British nationalist, to be an American nationalist, and the problem is that it's wrongly attributed. That word, I think people instantly associate it with Adolf Hitler, and I would argue that he wasn't actually a nationalist because obviously he invaded Poland and he went beyond German borders. I didn't even mention Jewish people, I didn't mention the Holocaust, and suddenly you have people like Rabbi Shmuley who are pretending that I got up there and I defended Adolf Hitler. It's just, this isn't
that is not
business.
What you said.
And this is why I say right now, please don't cut me off. Please do not cut me off. A huge issue that you have right now is this dishonesty. If you really
I hate when people try to cut me off when they see when the point going and they see the point getting good.
Want to understand why Israel is facing a PR crisis, why Zionism right now to people doesn't feel good and they don't want to associate themselves with it, is because it seems like it takes so many lies to maintain. There's no reason to misrepresent what I said and to tell people that I support Adolf Hitler, other than the fact that you want people to hate me. And so I'm deeply appreciative that you guys have that clip ready to go.
Well, you may respond to what you just said and to that clip. Now you've watched it.
Okay.
Great leaders need great sleep. If you're tossing and turning all night, then running on fumes all day, you will burn out longer. 40%.
She keeps on saying lying. I never said you shouldn't play the clip. I'm actually happy you did. She said if Hitler had only focused on domestic policy, she would have had no issue with him. His domestic policy was to the Kristallnacht, burn down 3,000 synagogues in a single night domestically. That was not in Poland. That was not in Czechoslovakia. His domestic policy was the 1934 Nuremberg laws. His domestic policy was a complete dictatorship where he destroyed the Bundestag and subjected and created Dachau under Himmler. So those are the historical facts. Now but what I said was, even then, the Jewish community gave her a pass. She explained it. One mistake, people make mistakes. Here's her history of anti-Semitism. She's not going to be barred from going into Australia because of anything she said about Israel. That is a fabrication. She's going to be barred. Australia is my wife's country, born in Sydney. She's going to be barred to go to Australia because she's a Holocaust denier, because a 100-year-old victim of Josef Mengele, the angel of death's experiments, came forward and said, you are going to traumatize me all over again. She actually said that Mengele's experiments, the fourth worst person in Nazi Germany after Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, Mengele, it was a fabrication. She's an out-and-out Holocaust denier. And Australia, God bless them, took in so many survivors after the war, including my wife's family from Slovakia.
Well, let me ask Candis Owens now.
She said that the Mengele experiments were false. Go ahead.
Let me ask Candis Owens now two things. One, are you a Holocaust denier, or do you accept that 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis in the Holocaust? And secondly, do you believe that Joseph Mengele did what he is reported to have done and has been since World War II ended?
Thank you for those questions. No, absolutely, I am not a Holocaust denier. This is, again, another fabrication based off of a monologue that I did in which I was putting pressure on the American government to explain why it is a fact that we learned all of these things about the horrific things that Nazi scientists did. And to be clear, Piers, I did not even mention Joseph Mengele's name in this skit at all. I spoke about all of the things that we learned, that we were told over the years, some of which ended up being rebutted, and there were tons of that part doesn't matter. The point is, the end conclusion of that is that the CIA, via an operation known as Operation Paperclip, took the Nazi scientists and brought them to America, where they continued horrific experiments on Americans. That's the full context of that. So they pulled out a statement, like one sentence, where I said, we've heard all of these sorts of things that they've done, cut people in half, sewed them back together. And I said, that sounds like a ridiculous waste of time. And when you pull that clip up by itself, it sounds like I'm just diminishing all of these stories, when in reality, I'm saying, let's take everything at face value. Let's say everything we've ever heard was true. Why on earth would the American government acquiesce to bringing these scientists over to America? And as a fact, Dr. Mengele was not one of the scientists which was brought over to America. So
but just to be
clear,
you accept. Hang on, I'll come to you, Rabbi Shmuley. To be clear, you accept the Nazis murdered 6 million Jews in the Holocaust.
Yeah, I have never once in any of my appearances
I'm just asking you to clarify
denied the Holocaust atrocities.
Okay.
Ever.
And you accept that Joseph Mengele was a despicable man who perpetrated horrendous crimes, including experimenting on Jewish people.
And you gotta be a sick human. Sometimes I think about that, be like, bro, what type of human wants to do that to another human, especially during a time where it wasn't no amnesia. It wasn't no anesthesia. Man, it was just sick, bro.
Clear, all of the scientists, the Nazi experiments that were done were horrific, and that's why I was saying they were so horrific that it makes you go, why on earth would the American government in this clandestine operation bring over the Nazi scientists, who then became a part of our CIA and continued experiments onto America through to the 60s and the 70s. And I was
let me ask Rabbi
what
Shmuley
those experiments were that was done throughout the Korean War.
Rabbi Shmuley, your response.
And I read it.
After this debate, we will post every single clip. That was a complete and utter fabrication. What she said was that she doubts that any of this happened because it was, as she just said, a waste of time. The whole Holocaust was a waste of time. Hitler had no winter equipment for his soldiers in Stalingrad under General Paulus in 1942 because the boxcars were taking Jews to Auschwitz. You see, that is what hatred is, Candis. It's where you hate so much that it becomes self-destructive. It's what's happening to you. You're a very gifted, eloquent broadcaster. You are self-destructing before America's eyes because you have some issue with the Jews, not with Israel. So let me continue. You actually said that Theodor Herzl was a Frankist. By the way, when you attack Frankists as a bunch of Jewish pedophiles, you forget to mention they all became part of your religion. They all converted in 1757 to Catholicism. You always omit that. But you said that Theodor Herzl was a Frankist, and you said he set up the state of Israel as a refuge for pedophiles.
So you just gonna blame her?
This is before Rafa.
You
as
already
a
said
refuge
this
for
already
Jewish pedophiles. You always referred to Jews as pedophiles. It's the main word you use about Jews. And every historian knows that what began in Norwich in 1099 with the first blood libel, where the Jews were falsely accused of taking a Christian child and drinking his blood, you actually believe that. You said that Christian bodies, this is before Rafa, this is before Israel, that Christian bodies were found.
And I've dealt with people like this. I'm not going to say who, but it's people who, you'll be talking to them and, they just want to argue with you rather than talking about what the facts are because they know the facts don't line up with what they're saying.
All over Europe. And when you speak about pedophilia, it's funny, you just converted to Catholicism. In 2002, Pope John Paul II, a pope that you would probably like, he was very conservative. He was a great man, great friend of the Jewish community, recognized the state of Israel, sent an ambassador in 1994.
All right, guys, I think we get what's going on here. Piers Morgan versus Candis Owens really is Rabbi whatever versus because I don't know dude's name versus Candis Owens. I'm gonna put this up and see how it do. 30 minutes. Let's see how y'all like the long form stuff.